from El Paso, and she's been part of this in a way since the first time we heard about this grant, and we brought her to campus and we were talking about the possibilities. And the first round we couldn't get a team together. The second round we finally got a team together, and Carlos and Gila Lopez, he also helped us in just putting some ideas together. So Cheryl, welcome. Cheryl's also a speech and language pathologist, and she works for Region 19. She's also one of our adjunct faculty at UTEP who teaches some of our special education courses. She joined Region 19 as the new early childhood special education specialist and program manager for speech therapists. And for the last 15 years, Cheryl has been involved with creating and implementing early intervention opportunities for younger children and working directly with parents and teachers to meet the needs of the child, especially when addressing severe behavior concerns, language development, classroom management, and routines and parent communication. She's worked with supporting schools, classrooms, and teachers through positive behavior interventions over the years. And her passion for helping others and increasing good communication between everyone involved with a child's learning and growth is what drives her to share with you today. Cheryl is also able to work with classroom teachers, and through empathy interviews, which you will learn today, can help all those involved uncover and identify unmet needs in order to plan with the classroom, teacher, and or districts in the areas of early childhood. So Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I believe I'm supposed to welcome my panel. If you guys want to come up, we have Guillermo Lopez from Any Baby Can. You want to join us? Cynthia Quinones, also from Any Baby Can, and Selena Millis. Yes. And that one's from Metro Care Services, Selena. So if you want to join us, you guys can take a seat and get comfy. There you go. All right, so I'm just going to ask the panelists a question and have you guys start answering the question. You can decide who wants to go first and maybe describe a little bit about yourself as well. So describe your general approach towards supporting a positive program environment for your ECI personnel.
I was closest, so I got the short straw. But again, I'm Guillermo Lopez, and I've been practicing with ECI for over 21 years. I'm an occupational therapist by degree, and through time, I kept going through the upward leadership positions, and the senior director for at Any Baby Can. We provide services in Travis, Hayes, Blanco, and Llano County, and in Travis County. About half the city is Any Baby Can, the other half is Easter Seals of Greater Austin. But really, you know, again, some of the ideas that were talked about earlier today, we do implement at Any Baby Can. You know, we do treat our staff like family. And that's the number one key position, I think, is building relationships. You know, we're in the business of supporting families so their children can thrive. But at the same time, we need to be in the business of supporting our staff so that they can be in a positive place when they go in to provide services to a client. If you're a disgruntled employee or not happy, imagine knocking on the door and being empathetic to a family that's in need. That's not going to be a very good relationship that's going to be built upon. You know, we build relationships like we do with our families, you know, with our staff from the very beginning. You know, we connect them with a mentor, someone that's been practicing for, you know, more than 2 or 3 years with us. And we like somebody with that 5 to 10 year experience to be the mentor for our new staff. And they also meet with their supervisors. The other part that we do is we also have a dedicated quality assurance person. and a program coordinator now that we got. So these individuals, these newbies can call these people at any time, and more than likely their schedule is more open to answer questions on technical questions that they might have. So the other piece that we do during the pandemic, we realized that, and they said it earlier, that there is a lot of isolation in what we do. You guys work on an island. We used to work on an island, Cynthia and I, but we're in our own little island in the office these days. But really, a lot of people are isolated. And part of trying to combat some of that is really we started to make sure that we met with our newbies, only a newbies as a cohort every 2 weeks, just so they could, meet and talk. And part of that was by chance, right? Sometimes you change things by chance. And what happened, there was a meeting that we got them all together, and someone that has 3 years or more experience were in a different classroom meeting. But the ones that were new to under 1 year of being employed by us, after the meeting, the meeting was from 1 to 3. And Cynthia, you want to talk about that a little bit more? No, okay, I keep talking. Okay, I'll keep talking. But the meeting was from 1 to 3, right? And it was, it was a formal meeting. But then, it was like 5 o'clock, and I was still there. It was on a Friday. We meet on Fridays from 1 to 3. It was 5 o'clock, and a lot of the people that were there from 1 to 3 were still there. And there was a lot of conversation. There was a lot of just incredible connections, because then we brought the older group to be with the younger group at the same time. And man, we said, you know what, this is what we need to do. We need to make sure that there's connections, and we started doing that every other Friday. And we started to see, some of them go to happy hour afterwards, and so that also, I don't know what happens there, but they do go to happy hour. And I think that's great, right? Because that's what needs to happen. The other part that we do tell our staff as well is, to really, when you're driving, instead of listening to the radio, call a staff member, call someone on your team, just to talk or to talk about a case or talk about what you just did, or to just kind of get some ideas. I think we lose track of that. If it's virtual, also, after a virtual visit, to call someone from your team, really get in that practice of doing that. It's tough, but we got to battle the isolation that sometimes happens with the job that we have here today. I'm gonna let Cynthia talk a little bit about recognition and what she does to help recognize staff. So I'm gonna pass the mic.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Quiñones with Any Baby Can, and I started working exactly 6 months after you. So we has been together. I was and I am an early intervention specialist, social worker. I'm from Puerto Rico, and I know the field in and out, all rules, everything. Why? Because when I came from Puerto Rico, I was said that I didn't know that I need to provide developmental rehabilitation services. I didn't feel that I'm a therapist at all. I'm like, what that people wants me to do, like seriously. I remember the vision screening where I'm like looking into the puppy, I'm like, what I'm supposed to look. So I know ECI, pretty good. And we has been, amazing job that we has been doing since that. We have improved a lot of stuff, and I need to keep doing this work to remain positive. Like there's no way that I can continue work with ECI or Any Baby Can if I don't remain myself positive. And that's the hard part. When they invite us to talk here, I was like, oh my God, with all of the concerns that I have, it will be the same concern that each one of you have. Funds, I would love to provide salaries to retain my staff, because my staff is happy, they love us. But as Guillermo said at the beginning, 10, 15,000 different, I would be happy with 10 more, like seriously. So I'm like, I have the opportunity to work in a profit area because I need a part-time plus working ECI, because there's no way with my kids that I will make it on my own, and I was a single mom. So I work in the profit area and I work at the same time in the nonprofit area, any baby can. And for me was like how my professional work, I'm not feel like I'm doing it different. I don't feel like I'm positive enough, like I'm not doing, like how come I enter, I don't feel that engagement. And then when I go to the profit, it's not even money wise, they're always happy, they're always smiling, they're always like, hey, and I'm like, oh my God, this is my non-professional job. So then when Guillermo gave me the opportunity to work along his side, I was like, okay, we need to do something different here. We need to really, really engage staff and engagement since the onboarding. And one of the directors said a comment that is like, this is a changing environment that we are. I mean, every time it's changing, every time it's changing. And I'm like, I was really happy last year we did a professional band for like 3 years different. And we have the last money would be a mentor, and we put money on the side, 3,000 to 4,000 in each level. And then I'm so happy. And guess what? I have 3 persons that resigned. And I'm like, good Lord, I give bonuses to everyone. To everyone, doesn't matter the productivity, nothing. We give bonuses to everyone. Guess what? I keep still have people leaving. And I'm like, and what's going on? You need to adapt all the time. Last year, we had the benefit, I will say, any baby can support us all the way, all the way. So then with this, we were like trying to pilot telehealth. I don't know if you remember that time. And when we were trying to pilot, pandemic came. And then it's not a pilot anymore. It's like within a month, you learn how to Zoom, how to do OneSpan, how to do DocuSign, how to have, I mean, anything that it was on the table, you need to try everything. So we changed, but then I started listening, I'm Zooming. Oh my gosh, it's like too many telehealth services, too many telehealth services. Then we get some money on the table, and Guillermo and I decide to support the staff. How? Giving them the ergonomic equipment. So we bought monitor for the house. We bought everything that they need for the home office. We bought good speakers. I mean, noise cancellation and everything that they need. And every time that I have an opportunity, it's like, what do you need from me? What do you need? How I can make your work better? And then we go from there. And then I go to Guillermo and I mess with him a lot. And then he gives me hard time, but he always tried to support staff all the way. And we try. I think that stay grounded and go and be involved with new staff, and even the old staff, experienced staff, not old. 21 years, so I'm experienced, I'm not old. But I think like a listening of what is working for them, not what I think, but what they are experiencing, because it's not the same feel at all. It's not the same feel as 20 years ago, as 10 years ago, even as 2 years ago. It's evolving, it's changing. And when something is evolving, it changes. Either we change or we get into the past. We try to do our best to support them and listen. What is working for you? What is not working? What can I do to change? And in the next session, we are talking about our challenges that are the same challenges that you all have, and how we try to resolve. I told my staff, hey, I'm always making joke. I'm like, I don't have a magic wand. So please, when you're asking for something, it needs to be something that I really can help you out. So that's from me. I can keep talking. I like to talk.
I know. So thank you. And we'll now go on to our next panelist.
I'm going to stand up because I'm short and I can't see half the room. My name is Selena Millis. I'm the program director of MetroCare Services ECI program in the Dallas Metroplex. And I'm going to introduce my assistant director, Becky Wisnand, who is the reason I'm in my position. She wasn't on the introduction, so our apologies on that. But so regarding supporting a positive work environment, there's 2 key bullet points I'll share. And I also could be here all day talking about this, but I'm going to stick to my 2. We strive to create a work environment that's positive and productive. And that's really important to us. And it's important that from onboarding, from that interview of the candidate, we share about that. Because I'm sure we have all in our careers had some different experiences where you could be a part of a positive work environment and no work's getting done. Similarly, you could be part of a productive work environment and the culture is completely toxic. So we don't strive for a positive work environment. We want to be positive and productive. And why it's important to foster that in the beginning with our team through at the interview is because we want to vet people to our team that believe in that same mission. So that's really important. The second piece is we believe a positive work environment does begin with leadership. And that's an extremely large topic. I'm really passionate about that. I could be here for 2 days talking about that, but they gave me 5 minutes. So really, what we mean by that is the responsibility of the leadership team of the program to lead through the finite and the infinite details of the program. I could talk about training, all those categories we've talked about, incentives, training, mentorship, all those categories, right? But some concretes that I'll just give underneath that point. We believe leadership's responsibility is to truly understand the barriers the team is experiencing and either remove those barriers, coach them on how they can overcome those barriers, or do some significantly program restructures where those barriers no longer exist for them. So that's one key point about that. And then we make sure that the team knows that that's our responsibility. We're very upfront and honest about that. Why? Because it helps them keep us accountable to it. And then we try to foster an environment where they can feel comfortable saying, you're supposed to remove this barrier for me and you have failed to do so. Because then we now have an open dialogue and back to relationships. We now have a functioning relationship where we're striving together to stay positive, productive, and successful. We believe that leadership sets the tone for the environment. So what I mean by that is if we make a mistake, and it's going to happen every day, we own it. We model for them how to own it and apologize, and then how to try to learn from that and make amends to that. If we don't know the answer to a question, myself and the rest of the leadership teams, we say, I don't know, but I'm going to get back to you on that. And I'll figure this out. And I might need to pull in some resources to support, but I'm going to get back to you on that. Why is that important? Because it normalizes for your team to also not feel like they have all the answers for each other and for families. We model the importance of setting boundaries. I think you naturally get into ECI because you want to help people. And so that comes a lot with this yes, yes, yes mentality, saying yes to everything. I'll do that. I'll do that. That's not going to sustain you long term. It's going to lead to burnout. And so we try to model at the leadership level how to say no. And that might mean, I can't support with that right now. And here's why, but let me connect you to a resource that I think might be able to help you with that need. We also try to monitor with boundaries, time management, work-life balance. Unless we're in crises like March of 2020, they don't see leadership on email after 5 p.m. or on weekends. They don't. And I'm not saying we're not maybe working at night sometimes, but we don't let our staff see that. But for the most part, we try to embody for them that when we're at work, we're going to give 100%, not 110%, because we don't want to burn out anybody, including our leaders, but we're going to give you everything. But then when the clock hits 5, we're going to go home and enjoy our personal lives because we want you to do the same. And so we really try to model that in what we do. And then last, we believe, when I say leadership, yes, a lot of this is formal leadership, but we also believe and try to instill in the team that leadership also means informal leadership. You can be a leader without a title. So we try to foster that awareness and also accountability through all levels of our team and our program to challenge them to ask themselves, how are you leading your fellow team members today? in your conversations and dialogues. And we spend a lot of time mentoring and training on that in our discussion. We believe if we keep those foundational pieces in mind every day, and they're going to shift as times change, right? One strategy that worked with that might not work tomorrow or next year. But if we try to keep those as cornerstones, that's what helps us maintain a positive and productive work environment. Becky, do you want to share anything else about that? Okay, next one.
Thank you. All right, no, it's on. Yeah, thank you though. All right, you guys did pretty good with your 5 minutes, I think. Yes. All right, yeah, you did. Related to supporting a positive program environment, what are some challenges you have faced and what are some specific strategies that you've implemented to address these challenges? I'm gonna start. Oh, that's his.
Sure. You're gonna join on this one. Our team experiences seasons of challenge that y'all have experienced. Staff turnover, high stress, caseloads. We've done it all. So years ago, when we were going through one of those challenging seasons, we kind of just stopped and we looked at each other and we're like, what are we doing wrong? You know, what we're missing something. And so we went to our team, we just called everyone in and we just laid it out. This is not like us. You know, is this just a season with no rhyme or reason, or is there something more that we're missing? And we just kind of sat back and let them just spew it out at us. And so some things, we heard a lot, as you can imagine, but some themes that we got from that touch point was just lack of connection with their fellow team members. It could be extremely isolating if you don't create and maintain this space for them to stay connected with each other in what they're doing. They don't have space to regroup was one of the things. Constant pace of direct service, lack of clarity and supports available to them when workloads are high or needs arise that they don't know what to do. And the EIS team felt like there was no career opportunities for growth. So there is something in that we couldn't necessarily, there was a lot we heard that day that there are things to acknowledge. We can't control that, but for the things that we could control, we try to change some things and implement some new things. So what do? We reorganize the entire program to provide mentor and lead positions throughout the whole program. So for every discipline group, there's at least a lead therapist or a lead provider. For larger discipline groups like our AIS team, we created the promotional tier ladder. And so we have EIS trainees, EIS fully qualified, EIS seniors, EIS leads, and then program supervisors. And that's just all within the EIS position. And we have people in all of those spots right now. So we provided that structure and that support within it. Each discipline group has that lead that does quarterly discipline group team meetings. Those are outside of our all team meetings. They just quarterly come together as a smaller team. In I already told you about that. We created the career ladders for each discipline group. We have had this going on for many, many years called the Sunshine Committee. And I think we had a,
Oh, we used to
this
have
is
that.
was created. We invited a team of employee volunteers to create this. And so their mission statement, care, compassion, and celebrating success and joyful unity. So their goals: create joy, celebrate the success and accomplishments of the team, have care and compassion, and cultivate unity. We actually started this in 2012 or 13, and it just continues to grow. And they've done some wild stuff, y'all. But what they do every month minimally is they recognize anniversaries. They foster something called Rays of Sunshine, where staff can submit successes from family stories or something that a fellow team member did. What else does Sunshine do? Oh, they host baby showers for all the people that keep getting pregnant in our program. Wedding showers, employee picnics. They've done employee picnics. Oh, and our annual holiday party, which has become a pre-COVID, pretty rowdy, pretty huge, so much fun. And that was all by the Sunshine Committee. And then we, this was really a hard lift in the beginning because I had to fight for this space with my uppers, but we have an annual staff retreat. And so my argument with that is because the question when I said I want a day a year where they don't do anything and I just have team building with them, they need that space. And the question was, well, how is that going to impact your revenue? If I don't do this, how is that going to impact my budget? Was the argument to that. So we got that started years ago and it's so successful. And we've actually increased our productivity since we started that I now have 2 annual staff retreats, one in September and one mid-year in March. In March, we just had our first face-to-face retreat in over 2 years. And it was wild and fun, but they really needed that. And so that's something that they know is coming. We plan them a year in advance and they extremely look forward to. And we have multiple people join in planning those events. Okay, your turn.
What do you want me to talk about?
I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I just think what they've already talked about, culture is really important. And we've really strived over the last 10 years or so to foster a positive work environment because it's just so critical. And so the Sunshine team has done a really great job. And but we just foster it in everything that we do. We try to get away from the pettiness. We don't allow people to talk behind people's backs. We are primarily women, so we're very dramatic at times. So we really encourage people to talk to one another, be adults, you're professionals, talk to each other, work things out. Of course, we'll step in if we need to in those dramatic times, but just the culture has been really important.
And last thing I'll add about that, with the Sunshine Committee, in case you guys are wondering, how do we fund that? The employees fund it. It actually started, I funded it out of my personal pocket because as you all know, our grant dollars can't fund stuff like that. So for the first year, I personally financed it all. I'm not encouraging that, but desperate times called for desperate measures. They loved it so much that now the employees fund it. They put in, we ask for if they want to, we don't require it, of course, $10, all employees. Most employees put in a whole lot more than $10 because they believe in it. And then I serve as managing those funds and we have the committee and we use that to budget out the events throughout the year for them.
Thank you so much for sharing those very positive outcomes. And now we'll let Any Baby Can take their
Okay,
chance.
thank you. I will say that in Any Baby Can,
Oh,
we are,
can you just, there you go. Just hold it
Yes.
closer to you so that everybody
okay,
can.
okay. So at Any Baby Can, we are all women, except like we hire two males. So Guillermo is our senior director. So we mess a lot with him. We are we are very diverse, but one thing to try for us to understand each other, we do the communication style inventory. So we know how each one of our staff communicate: amiable and expressive, driver, and analytical. So, and we train our staff to learn how to communicate within each other, which is then on style and adapt the same way that they do it as with the family. So that's something that it's working. One thing that I'm always, and I have my supervisors here, that I'm always telling them, it's like, give the benefit of the doubt to everyone. I mean, sometimes they are upset because this one came late or not, but you don't know what that person and all the situation that happened to that person. Celebrate that she's here, and then talk to the person later on, but give the benefit of the doubt. I think like when you start doing that, everything it's like a very nice. But anyway, Guillermo wants me to talk about recognition, and I'm like the one that do a lot of party everywhere. There's a party, Cynthia. I do happy hours a lot. Okay, so with this virtual wall, I cannot do happy hours. We cannot go, but we did happy hours online after five. But anyway, we start doing, and we call on wine meetings, like everyone's will meet and we talk about all of our issues, our family issues and everything. So, but we take like a 1 hour, 2 hours. The only problem is like we are 65 staff. So 1 hour, it's kind of hard. So we try our best, but we start investing on those meetings. One thing that I do, before I send happy birthday card to everyone, but now because we are virtual, so I start with the group greeting card so everyone can sign online, and I'm sending for anything, even engagement, even a new house, and celebrating each single milestone that they have in their personal life or at work. And that's something that we do a lot. And then at the staff meeting and the all staff meeting, one thing that I do is like we recognize and we celebrate staff, and we give some gift card, $5 Amazon card, $10, because as you said, I mean, budget is an issue at ECI. But I open the meeting for them to start recognizing peers. Like they can recognize, they can talk, we can spend time and acknowledge that little bit of milestone that they have. And remind me if I'm forgetting something, but I'm always celebrating everyone. There's a celebration at the whole agency, and Cynthia is there. At the agency level, I did an international launch long time ago, and I'm still there after 20 years. And it just recognize your culture. Let's eat. I like to eat. Let's eat and let's share our culture. So I'm always in any type of celebration. I'm in. I don't know if you want to add something because I talk a lot.
Thank you, Cynthia. No, really, just I'm going to say this. This 2 hours that we started the summit today has already been beneficial to us. Taking ideas from Selena for sure. I'm going to probably take some of your ideas that you talked about, but also just the data and the research to support what we're doing already, right? And it really is process improvement, right? And process improvement, that means you have to listen. And what we've done, sometimes we think we're doing great, but unless you're getting feedback, you don't really truly know, right? And that's part of what we really have implemented over the last 2 or 3 years is, anybody that we hire, we meet with them at 6 months. They do have their performance review with their supervisor, but then they also meet with Cynthia and I, and we just tell them straight up to say, what are we doing? What went well? What did we do well? And then we also have to listen to what part did we not do well, or what part can we improve on? And then you take those ideas that they give you back, to say, and especially if it's more than 1 or 2 people saying, you didn't do this very well, then you have to look at your system and say, okay, how am I going to improve that piece? And I think through process improvement, we can get better. So, and I think that's going to be where I stop talking, and I'm going to give the mic up again. So.
All right, so I think at this time we can open it up for questions if anybody has.
Or why don't we wait till the end?
Oh,
that
okay.
You can do your presentation and then we'll have time.
Oh,
for
okay, that's great. Okay, thank you. Then we'll do that.
so we can keep on.
All right. So if you look, there's a QR code, you can get to the Padlet that actually has these strategies in this presentation. So you're welcome to join it. And then once you have it, you'll be able to go to it as often as you want to. It has a lot of resources and information. So if you're interested in this, and then I can tie it into a lot of what you guys were already talking about, just opening it up with being able to listen. That's going to be a skill set that we'll talk a little bit about when we start talking about empathy interviews. And so then if you just want to go to the Padlet. Oh, okay. Yeah. And what's nice about the Padlet is you can go to it at any time. I don't change it. You can add comments, talk to each other, and then of course, download all the resources that are there. There we go. All right. So in thinking about what they were talking about in those positive environments and starting with it's all that open communication, and it takes not just talking and asking those questions, but to truly listen. So we're going to talk a little bit about empathy interviews and being open to what is going on and what's being said and what the stories are, so that you can then go through the celebrations and your sunshine committee and have all of those available. But first, as adults right now, we're needing to feel connected again. And so we need to feel like if you ask me something, you really are going to listen. Especially if I'm going to tell a story about something that's related to the work that I'm doing. And so I'm doing a lot of this in school districts with teams. I do it with SPED departments, all the way from the receptionists, secretaries, clerks, to the SPED director, and all the staff involved, because they're all I'm hearing the same thing that they're all saying, and they don't feel connected to each other. They come in, they're working together, and then they're wondering why they don't get the same greeting, or, this person looks lost or different or angry. And so they don't get to really spend time to ask each other what's going on in their lives. And sometimes we don't know. And so when I'm working with teams, we go through and start looking at empathy. And you had mentioned empathy as well for families, but I think it needs to start with us first, before we get out there, right? And to make connections with other people. And what I love is Dr. Galvo had given me this reflective supervision article that you guys have, and it's directly related to ECI. And so this is something for you to kind of peruse later on, so you can get kind of an idea of where we're going with this. Another thing I've done is given you a 20-minute Brene Brown TED Talk on vulnerability. And so before I do any of the work with the adults, the first thing I want to do is talk about vulnerability. And that's always kind of a negative word to some people. I don't want to be vulnerable, because that means I'm open to judgment or mistakes or not knowing. And so we go through why vulnerability is actually the opposite. It's a superpower, right? When you're most vulnerable, you're most open. So as soon as you're open, then you're able to be filled up with new information, new ideas, new experiences. But if you're not feeling that vulnerability, or you don't understand it, then this is a great way to start first. So you have the video for yourself if you decide to use this. And then we go into story time. So this is that empathy interview part. And then I've given you resources on the purpose of empathy interviews. This is used with design thinking from Stanford University, and it's used in a variety of industries. And what they do is they step back and they think, okay, I have to get somebody to talk about what's going on, what their thoughts are, what they're needing, but I need to do it in a way that promotes, an openness, and for them to be honest and vulnerable. And so we're going to do it through an actual interview that causes stories. So then what I've done, and I think you can scoot up just a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. So here, this is the steps that I take, the things that I do as I go into empathy interview mode and give to directors to use with their staff. And I'll let them know you have to first have a purpose for your interview. What is it that you're trying to unveil or dig into? What is it that you're trying to find out? What is that unmet need that you kind of have an idea, but you need to get back from them? And then the recommendation is about 20 minutes per interview. You don't really need to sit too long with them, just long enough for that listening piece and for them to start opening up. And then you had talked about, like, later on you had, you thought they were still there talking. We do need a lot of time for that. But for the empathy interview, you want to be specific for a moment or a story. And I've given you different prompts to use. And that, tell me about a time when. And then whatever that area or need is that you feel like you want to dive into. And then there's other prompts that are just open-ended, and it causes somebody to want to share. And then while you're listening, this is the key for listening, is when you're prompting in between. So what happens as adults is we start listening to somebody's story, and it reminds us of a story. And then we're like, oh yeah. And then you start wanting to talk, and then you use your eyebrows and you get all excited, right? Let me get some water. And so anyway, so you start, like wanting to have a back and forth. So I'll run some of these empathy interviews and put people in teams of 2. And then I'll say, if I hear 2 people talking, then it's a conversation. But if one person is speaking and the other is just politely listening, then we know we're actually doing an interview. And so they have to kind of check themselves, right? And I said, watch your eyebrows, because I know you're getting involved in this story. But what happens is the person's watching your reaction, and then they want to tell you what they think you want. And so you don't want that. You want them to tell what they need to get out. And so prompting them with simple things like, tell me more. It's very interesting the first time you do that and how an adult responds, like, you really want to listen to this? Like, okay, I can really tell you more. Are you sure you really want to know more? And it's just being open. Yeah, no, tell me more about that. And so that opens them up because they're thinking, wow. And after we experience that, I'll ask, how did it feel to be listened to? And they'll say, I really saw that I had an opportunity, a moment to really tell my story. And I took it even further because of the prompt. Sometimes when we start these interviews, people will automatically tell you what they think you want to hear or what they think they're supposed to say. And so it's hard, again, because of that vulnerability piece, or maybe because we haven't been asked before to tell a story, then it's hard for us to really dig in. But if you continue to just sit quietly and just listen, and as you see them kind of like not real sure what to say next, these are great prompts. How did that make you feel? And it's that touchy-feely stuff, the emotions that people are keeping now and not sharing openly. They're not sure if they can. And it turns out all of us are having the same emotions. We're very connected that way. And so this helps that person realize, okay, I'm still able to tell my story. So that's just a little bit of how to start that empathy interview process. And there's so much more to it. And another thing they recommend, if you can you do them one-on-one. And if you can record, like a video record, and they're okay with that, and you're the only one who's going to view it, during the interview, you don't have to take notes. You can just be present. And then later you can watch, and then you can take more in-depth notes about those facial expressions, all that non-verbal communication that 80% of what we talk or what we say and what our message comes from is usually our body language, our gestures, our head, the way we place ourselves. So you can kind of go back in view and be like, oh, they were telling me this made them proud, but then I looked at them and they looked confused or they looked sad or scared. And so you can really draw more information out of it. So more resources in there as well. And then we're going to get to barriers. So I thought, I love that you mentioned barriers and all the things that you guys do with it, because I think it's so essential. And sometimes we don't think to give people an opportunity to actually talk about their barriers. We list it for them, or they come to us when it's too late. They come to us after the problem or during that crisis. For them, those barriers in those moments feel like a crisis. And it stops or prevents them from moving forward or continuing to be connected to their why, their passion. And so when we talk about them in a more neutral environment, then we know they exist. And then they know they can talk about them and it's not as emotional away from the actual situation. Usually we find out about them during the situation. So what we do is have an opportunity as a group to start listing barriers. And then I've given you a lot of different steps because there's so much involved in this when you really dig deep into them. So the first thing is everybody gets an opportunity to just sit quietly and reflect. And they write a barrier, and then they write another one and another one. But what's important is that each barrier is placed on a larger Post-it or a chart tablet, and it's one barrier per, because that needs to grow and it needs to be its own barrier. It's not a checklist that we start marking off. We have to actually dig deep into each of those barriers. And then when they're done, they post them. And then as a group, we walk around And so then I've given you even more information in how each step or level, the time that we recommend to do it. And you kind of walk around the barrier. I think you can, yeah, scoot up still. There you go. I keep going to the cute dog. Mhm. Yeah, we need to walk around just like that. Okay. And then, because it's barriers. And so we walk around, and the first thing we do on that first walkthrough is we just write on everybody's barrier, I agree, or tell me more. Because I might write time as a barrier, but time for me could be very different than time for you. And so I may not know what you're talking about. So this is a great opportunity for people to walk down and ask a clarifying question or put on their poster, just simply tell me more. And then we take about 5 minutes to do that. We just quickly walk around. Oh, I agree. Oh, I need more information. And then when we go back, the author of those barriers, and they see that somebody said, tell me more, then they can define it. And then they can take a minute to really reflect, like, what do I mean by time? And when they start to define it, then they can get more into those details. And then that helps us narrow down what that barrier really is. And again, it's outside of the situation, so it's a more neutral, environment to start really focusing on it. And so this is where you ask them to just be really clear on what that barrier is. Then we're going to organize them. And then I've given you some steps on that as well. And the time that it might take. And again, these are like 20-minute opportunities, and they're so powerful. And they add up. So the whole session could be an hour and a half that you're doing this. You could do it over time, but really important that you always make sure you're completing the whole barrier process, because sometimes we ask for them and we're like, okay, we're going to get some solutions to this. And then they don't feel like they hear back about it. Like, oh yeah, I told them, I answered that survey. I told them how I was feeling. And then nobody ever really said anything. So we really want to come back and organize the barriers, and we want them to help us. So you might walk around and see the barriers as leadership and think, okay, and you can kind of already get the categories, the sense, there's time, there's commitment, there's interest, motivation, financial, whatever it may be. And then you start posting maybe larger categories, and then ask them as a group to grab their barriers and put them where they think they belong. So you start to categorize them, and then that way you see what's really heavy, what area is everybody really, focused on. Even though they have a very specific one, it probably goes into one category. And then from there, you also start to see all the I agree. Ah, yes, this is like a really big one. That's the consensus. And then we're going to start to design a solution. And then I've given you, just different strategies and exactly the steps when you start to design solutions. And this is going to take a little bit longer, but you're really going to focus in on that first barrier. And it's one thing at a time, so that I can really delve into it and learn what the process would be for all the barriers. We can't tackle them all, but we can focus in on one. And from there, you ask your team, think big. You have $1 million and 100 hours in a day. What would you do to solve this? We have to start big to start narrowing down those ideas. And the solutions come from them and also yourself. And on the big Post-its now, or the big poster, now you can start putting little Post-its of all the solutions. And you have them brainstorm. And brainstorming would be just a solution per Post-it, just it's its own little thought, and then another one, and then another one. And then you give everybody an opportunity to read all their solutions to that one barrier. And then everybody starts to see similarities. And then as a group, and it could be a small group working on that particular barrier or a whole group. And then as that group works together, then they combine what's really relevant, what sounds good to them, what's feasible, what's exciting to them, and then they come up with that one solution idea. And then the last part of it, you're going to actually then trial it or pilot it, maybe with one particular person or group of people. And as you trial it, the most important thing is that you do follow-up, that you actually follow up. And following up once a week right away is the best way to make sure, because you've taken all this time for this one barrier, you know how important it is to almost everybody. And now everybody's put in their solutions and you've come up with that solution. So once a week you go through and you could do follow-up, just even sitting down and chatting, having, you know, how's this feel? What do you need? What do you see that's different? You could do a survey, or you could even do an observation with like a pre-made checklist of what that target is. And so these are just different ideas, and it all comes from that design thinking process, but it's done in a way that's feasible and it doesn't cost you anything. No, nothing? Okay. So, but what it does cost is what's most valuable, and that's your time. But it's the same time and effort you're having to put in when you're not, you know, handling these or identifying them or helping each other work through them. So that's what I have for you. I thank you so much for your time. So I get this time we'll do questions then.
Yes, now we're open. Please
Somebody
take
just
an
continue that.
opportunity now to ask any of your questions to your peers and colleagues and to Cheryl. And
For the program that does the staff retreats, can you share what kind of topics or activities you do during the staff retreats?
Yes. The answer is it's never the same. We plan the retreats based off of what we've assessed in the last 6 months the program needs. So we've had retreats where all we've done is play. Like we had one retreat where our themes was dress in 80s, and we did like competition-based games pretty much all day, and we ate a lot of food. And that's what they needed. That's what they needed. We've had then retreats where they've told us, all right, we feel pretty connected, but we really want to relearn about X topic. And so we'll do some retreats where we're maybe doing some retrains on things related to the program, or we'll have guest speakers come in and do some trainings. And then there's been retreats where we just sense that they're burnt out. And so we will surprise them and we'll make the retreat a half-day agenda of team building, and then we'll feed them, and then we'll say, and guess what? You now have the rest of the day to go do something for yourself. Go do something for yourself. Take care of yourself. And I better not see you on email in 10 minutes. So like, you know, it really depends. And we try to keep it open and flexible, again, to listening to what they need in that season of the team environment.
Kind of similar to what Selena does on our staff retreats. We do the same. We probably limit the training or information to 2 to 3 hours at the max. And then the rest of the day, you know, we will barbecue out there for them. Or, you know, sometimes we live in Austin. One time we've gone to Zirkle Park and they got in the canoes, stuff like that. But really, you know, low cost, get the information, but then also give them an opportunity to have unstructured time. To really, you know, build relationships. And you know what, they might talk about work, they might, and that's okay. They might talk about, you know, something they needed to ask, and that's a perfect time for that. But really it's unstructured. So anything they feel they want to do is fine. Laughing is always a good thing. And so that's what we want. So.
does anybody else want to add something that they've done during any retreats or team building activities?
We've also done a scavenger hunt. I forgot to mention that. We send them across the city for a scavenger hunt, like to go to some of the resources in Travis County. And I don't think we've done the Hays County one yet, but so.
Any other?
I have a question about empathy interviewing. It's a new concept to me. When do you do them? Do you do them at any time? Are they related to, you know, something that you're seeing or feeling among staff, or is it just something you do periodically at any time? I guess I'm having difficulty like grasping? Yeah, when do you do that?
I love that. Well, I think actually it is more of a anytime, believe it or not. So one of the times I did an empathy interview was just on the spot when I was called in to work with a teacher who everybody was concerned because of a student. And as I was watching and observing, I was realizing the teacher was disconnected. And you could tell she had the skills and the need and the want, and she was wanting to, she just wasn't present. So when we pulled her aside to kind of talk about the observation, then I started doing the empathy interview. And I just used, I didn't say, okay, I'm doing an empathy interview with you right now. What I did is I just realized, like, I think she just needs somebody to listen to her right now. And this may have nothing to do with what we think it is. It's not the student, you know? And so as I just thought, okay, I'm just going to go into that mode. So I just started asking her, tell me a time when you did feel successful with him. And then she was like, oh, and so she had to think and she started talking. And the more she talked, I was like, tell me more about that. And how did that make you feel when he did respond to you? And then she was remembering, and then she was thinking, I do know how to do this. And it turned out it was the program they implemented that she had to, you know, it was almost scripted, and it kept her from making connections to the student. But that came out because she told the story. It was when we started at the beginning of the year, and I could do some free flowing conversation with him. And then she's in her own way, she realized, wow, you know, it was because now they have me on this really, you know, strict scripted program. And now I don't have time to enjoy that time with him. So I don't feel connected. And so as that came out, I was able to give that information to her director. And then, you know, the director realized she needed to let her know, you don't have to follow the program just perfectly. You're allowed to have, you know, some room. So an empathy interview could be for a lot of different reasons. And again, that's why it's really important at the beginning that if you have a purpose, then you know why you're going to use it.
So I love the idea of talking about the barriers and everyone having those conversations. How do you, because we do have staff who love their job, do it well, have no issues with any like time management are perfect. How do you help keep them engaged if they're a part of that team during that conversation? Because they're thinking, I could be out seeing kids right now, not hearing people complaining about their job.
I love that. I think for them to walk around, for them to walk around and be the ones that help with those clarifying questions, because that might be curious to them. Like, why do you find that as a barrier? And I work right through it. And then they would definitely be the one engaged where maybe immediately you already have them in a solution table and they're already looking at barriers going, oh, this is what I do. I've never shared this. I didn't think that I needed to, you know, give somebody information about this. And so sometimes when they look at their colleagues' barriers, it's good for them to know how everybody else might be struggling and what's easy to them. You know, it's nice when they can share why it's easy to them. So it's good to keep them engaged in that way. Maybe they're not the one who's creating a barrier, but they're definitely one that can help clarify, you know, because they'll be curious and you can engage them in that way to get that person to talk more about what that barrier truly is, define it better, and then help with the solutions. Yeah.
Planner? What's a position she keeps talking about? Like a planner.
Wait, it sounds like there's somebody on Zoom who's not on mute. So can you please check and make sure you're muted?
Thank you. Okay, I had questions about the empathy interviews also. So just thinking, because I really love the idea, do you share that it's an empathy interview, or is it like, could we just have a little discussion? So that's one question. And then just thinking about our organizational structure, who normally does those, or do you have a suggestion? Is it
So for the first part of that, and again, if your purpose is you're planning it, then yes, you're going to let them know. So for instance, I worked with a district that they wanted to help an adult that needed to see inclusion as positive And so this was something she wasn't on board with. And so a lot of other things came from that. So when they came to me, they said, how do we open this up? So, because we can give them all of the ways to make an inclusive classroom, I'll give them everything, right? But we knew it was the adult's mindset. And so we went in, and everybody that was going to be involved, all the staff to create that, we told them, you're going to be involved in an empathy interview. This is an opportunity for you to tell your story when you were successful with this. And when you're starting to have some difficulty, or you have questions on what is this going to look and feel like for our district? We've never done this before. And so she was part of that sample, and we didn't single her out. So she knew everybody was and had an opportunity to talk about it. And then I did it as an outsider because the adult was being disgruntled, I guess, and working against. So she wasn't going to open up to anybody, within her district. So at that time, they brought me in to do it. And then there's another time I did it with another director, and she did them because she wanted to start having that open communication with her staff. She was like, I don't do a lot of that. Like, usually I'm doing one-on-ones with them very quickly because I've observed them, or I have feedback, or, it's because they've come to me. And so she used that, and she told them, I'm doing some empathy interviews because I want to get to know you guys again. I want to get the pulse of where you're at right now so we can be connected again. Does that help?
Yes. Oh. I have a question about the empathy interviews. One of the things that we've been working on in our agency is trauma-informed care. And one of the things that comes to mind when we think about opening things up when people are struggling is triggering people, and people having maybe an extreme response. So how do you prepare for that if you have someone that, you think it's just they're having a little pushback against a policy, and then it ends up opening something that really becomes a clinical need?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I think, again, being everybody that's going to be involved in preparing for this and knowing their purpose of it, if you already have an idea of some of your staff, or if it comes out with the trigger, just knowing what's available to them, counseling or somebody to speak to right away, because it might bring something out. That vulnerability, we're hanging on to it so tightly that there's probably people you wouldn't even realize were at that level, right? Because we're not talking about things. Everybody knows what to do, right? You have your checklist, it's what to do. And I know how to do it, but we're so far from our why, so often that we don't check in with that emotional part of ourselves. We just feel so drained. And so there's a possibility for that. But, knowing who you have available for them to speak to afterwards is probably going to be really crucial. No, great planning.
I had a question for MetroCare. Y'all had mentioned how you have your leadership team kind of model the giving it all for work, and then at 5 going home and enjoying your family. Do y'all have any good strategies that you give to your staff to help them be able to, not work extra hours and not work late? And, do you have certain things that you kind of utilize to help with that, especially if you're not fully staffed sometimes?
What? Just gonna pass that over. I'm struggling on how to answer that because I think it's multi-layer in response. It depends on the staff, and it depends on their current skill set that they have. And if this is a ongoing thing that really needs to be coached and monitored, or is this a fluke thing, and why is it a fluke? If this is a one kind of deal, season kind of thing. So I think it depends. I think I'm going to go back to my whole thing on the importance of leadership. We have spent a decade now really ensuring we have a strong leadership team across all discipline groups. And so with that, our lens is to be looking for that. And as quickly as we see signs of that, addressing it in a warm, we care about you, we want you to be successful way with the employee. And so then that goes back to the leader being able to establish a relationship and rapport with that individual. So they'll be open to sharing what their challenges are, or the leader will be intuitive to know what's really going on and have more concrete strategies and solutions to provide to that individual team member during that situation. So I'll give a concrete, my lead, she's been with us for a decade. She's been in the ECI for over 20 years. She started to have overtime on her time card. Well, she didn't start, she had, and I immediately picked up the phone and I said, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you. And you got overtime. So are you okay? That's the first thing. Are you okay? And she said, well, remember, I had to take over those extra cases and I already had gotten some new cases. And so we just talked about that. I'm like, you know what? Thank you for reminding me. I completely forgot we handed that to you. How can I help you with this right now? And so we had a dialogue and we came up with, I was going to help cover some of those visits, and she still was going to have overtime, but it wasn't going to be as much. And then we had a deadline of when we expected it would trend back down. And if we didn't meet that deadline together, that action plan, I think is a better way to say it, then we had a secondary follow-up to follow up on that together. So it really has to be individualized to the why in that moment and the team member that you're working with. It's not black or white.
So how are you balancing that with the ECI? Choose my words carefully. With the ECI requirement that we be available for families when they need us. And so I love what you're saying about families, because I believe that wholeheartedly. I think our agency is about healthy families. And if my staff are not healthy, how can we help other people?
Absolutely.
While at the same time, we're told we have to see families when they need to be seen, which is sometimes at 7:30 at night and on a Sunday morning. And that is not healthy for my staff.
So I'm going to respond to that.
Thank you.
I'm going to hope the state office hears with good intentions, benefit of the doubt, my answer. This came up actually in my interview with Chris and his team, because this is real. One of the things that I shared I'm challenged with is I have these wonderful EISs that start after college with us. Wonderful. But when it comes time for them to start having families of their own, they're like, how am I going to make this work? I can't do evenings and nights with babies at home. And so that's a real challenge. So this is how we handle it. We have a family agreement at enrollment, and in that family agreement, there's a statement there that says our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Our team schedules our visits within those business hours. If you're unable to meet, with your therapist during that time, please contact our office to arrange alternate schedules with a supervisor. That usually cuts down those requests. Now, what happens? Some families, they'll still try to go outside that and work it out with a therapist. And this is where we do boundary training with our team. Maintain your boundaries. If a mom says, I can only do 7:30 on Thursdays, you don't jump and say, I'll make that happen. You'll say, unfortunately, I don't work at those hours, but here's my availability I do have to offer with you. Can we make that work? And if she says no, then the answer is, well, I'm going to have to bring this back to my supervisor and we'll get back to you with some alternatives. But that doesn't mean the alternative is 7 Thursdays only on Thursdays. Now, have we met halfway and said, you know what, we'll be able to accommodate that for a month, but after a month, we're going to need to look at alternative time? Yes, we've done that, but we don't jump at that and we don't set the pace or the tone that we're going to be able to do that for families, because we need to protect our team as well. And we believe we can do both at the same time. We can support families and make sure they get the services in a meaningful way, but also protect that our team needs to have personal lives and a work-life balance. I hope everyone from state office heard that with great intentions. That's what we do.
And similar to us here at NBB Can as well, we do try to set a limit on the ceiling at what time they want to start that last visit. Sometimes during winter time, 5:30 is dark out there. Do we really want staff out there at 5:30, 6:30 at night? No, really the answer is no. That 8 to 5 window is what we say. We know that there's some families that we should accommodate, perhaps at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. But really those families, like Thursdays at 7:30, some of our staff would say yes, they really would, you know, but we tell them that that's not reasonable for anyone, right? From their family life to our oversight, because you have to have oversight. If they're working at 7:30, somebody's got to be out there doing the oversight on that too. So really, truly, there has to be a limit, and I like, and I'm gonna steal your idea again, Selena. I'm gonna put a notification that our hours are 8 to 5. Contact the supervisor, because that's a great idea. But so yes, that's how we do it.
I think we'll have one more question, and then we'll start.
Can you tell me what some of your alternative ideas are when staff aren't able to accommodate, or you don't have the staff to help the families, you know, that aren't able to go after hours, weekends, things like that? What is y'all's program doing to help get these services for the families?
Well, first, what we say is, where's the baby during the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.? And that usually opens up a dialogue for solutions, whatever that situation is. So I mean, that's really the solution. Where's the baby? And then we go back to why we're doing, what do we do at ECI? What is our why? Why is that important to join with the routine caregiver that's with the baby during waking hours? And then sometimes we're prepared. We're prepared going in those solution discussions to come out with a solution. And sometimes the answer is we're not a fit for them. They really don't want to join us in our model of service. They want someone that's going to come in and work with the baby and get out. And so not join with the routine caregiver. So sometimes this alternate solution is, you know what, I don't think we're a good fit for you. Would you agree? Is this feeling forced? And let's get you connected to someone that would be a better fit. And I think that's important that we do at our program across all levels that I didn't touch on because we're running out of time, but we do that with staff too, y'all. Back to positive work environment. We're prepared if someone doesn't want to join us in our mission to kick them out of the nest. That's what we say at the leadership level. And actually this team kicks them out of the nest now. We don't really have to do it sometimes, but we're prepared to do that with families as well. And I don't mean that we don't want to serve those families. We're here, we're ready, but there needs to be boundaries in everything we do. Sure. I do. My background, I'm a licensed psychologist, but in California, I was a licensed marriage and family therapist. So the running joke is you're with Selena, counseling, you know, but no, I think that some of that pulls into a lot of this, but we've been training on that. You shared Brene Brown. We did Brene Brown training about 5 or 6 years ago during a retreat on vulnerability and boundaries. And then we just breathe that into everything we do with our team. I did not say that. I did not say that. No. Boundaries.
But when you
and you know, it's really empowering to staff to know that they can say no. I mean, I think that's one of the key things that sometimes young staff or, you know, new staff don't realize, that they can say no, or that's not going to work, right? Let's negotiate the time that we can provide the service.
Right. And I think this is a perfect example as you're starting to think about what you want to work on for the rest of the year and what you're going to leave with tomorrow. If this is a need you see, that this is something we can pull and start saying, well, maybe we can find some grant funds to help provide some of that training. Okay, but so that takes us into what you're going to do next, right? Thank you all so much for your invaluable tips and resources. And Cheryl, thank you for opening the door here. So on page 7, you had notes for you to keep if you want to use that. But we're going to, what we'd like for you to do is on page 8, you have this chart, and this is for you to just start jotting down some ideas about if you were to select supporting a positive program environment as one of your action items to work on. what are what strategies would you like to implement? What's your timeline? What are some of the people or the team people you're going to bring together? What are the resources? What are some of the estimated costs? And any sources of evidence that this might work for you. You don't have much time to detail this, but you do have time to just jot down some ideas. And then tomorrow, you all will decide what are the 2 action items you're going to want to work on more in depth. And then we'll go from there. So from now.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes. So I
Oh,
would just,
only 5 minutes.
yeah, I would just list, some of the strategies that you heard: empathy interviews, staff retreats, right? Sunshine Committee, those types of strategies, or other ones that popped into your head. Take some notes, jot them down. If you can think of any activities or resources or data sources that you might need in order to further develop that action plan, you can. But take about 5 minutes or so to chat amongst your group to do that. And then we'll have more time tomorrow to really flesh out this action plan if this is an area you want to focus on. But then after that is lunch. After lunch, you'll come back, we'll have a little drawing and we'll do another panel. But let's thank this panel and our wonderful guest speaker, Cheryl.